Garrett Blevins here with the final workout of, I'm not exactly sure what week this is. I think it's week 5 of the prep. I wanted to start out here by doing a little sumo review. This on the left is 585 from last week, and on the right is 585 from this week. Now this was from the previous video. You'll see there the speed was about the same, but the form is definitely different. I have a wider stance on the day that goes better and a more narrow stance on the week before there in the blue. And the wider stance allowed me to move on this set 615 at pretty much exactly the same speed as 585. You'll also notice that with the glute activation and hip work I've been doing, that my hips and the bar pretty much start to move at the same time. And again, that's some of the best sumo form that I've had, and I really like the hook grip. It's taken a while to get used to it, and I still am getting used to it, but on this day had no pain really at all with 615, and hoping that'll keep up, that trend will continue. So it was a good day. Happy about that. This is the next day, and pretty beat up. I did a good amount of deadlift volume on that. It was a Friday. And so when I came in Saturday, this was my last warm-up. Was it about a 7, I would say, with 495. But it just really beat me up. But one thing I'll say is, it's difficult sometimes when you make big jumps. You'll see I go right from 495 to 565, which was my working weight for the day with 5s, for my initial set. And sometimes that can make it difficult with RPE. I was just feeling really tired and beat up. As I went back and watched this set over again, I noticed two things. One, within the set itself, I actually am going to change my stance with. I'm a little too wide in my stance right here. I'm a little bit better with a little bit more narrow stance. As I brace my gut, I can really kind of push out of the bottom of the hole a lot better and stay more upright and just have a stronger squat overall with a slightly more narrow stance, just because things kind of squish and run into each other more than they do with a wider stance. This set, I wrote it in initially as a 9, but I think it was more of an 8.5. I definitely had one more rep, probably 2 at the end of that, but I was just feeling very tired. And dropped the back off work down pretty far. It's a 3 RPE drop, which comes out to about 9% fatigue. And that's a lot of fatigue, but I had missed a whole squatting workout this week, and I was trying to make up some of that volume. However, it's very difficult to make up volume. It just doesn't really happen. And I really pushed it hard on bench. I had done about, I think I did 7 sets of 8, or something like that. Some crazy amount of sets of 8 the day before with close grip. And then I finish up later, you'll see it, I kind of make it go fast because there were so many of them. I had 10 sets of 5 with my back off work for bench today with competition grip. I did 9 back off sets actually. But I'm trying to keep my volume up and make up a little bit of lost ground, but I want to just advise everybody out there that feels that way. Do what you can if you feel fresh, but don't injure yourself. Even these, you'll see them here with 515, were pretty rough sets. I mean, I was gassed after each one of those, and it was just a tough day. I probably shouldn't have pushed it so hard. It may eat into my next week. And I almost passed out. Here you see how I set the weight down there a little bit on the second rep. That's because I was getting that black tunnel vision and couldn't see. So I had to relax for a minute, and then I finished out the set as I felt better and better each rep, but was just pretty much exhausted on this day. It was nice, though, to have this back off work, which I'm calling hanny pressing. My coach only referenced it one time, but it's just something I've started using more and more. And I throw the bands on there. I start with 3 sets of 3, or 3 sets of 5 with 3 bands, and then 3 sets with 2 bands and 3 sets with only 1 band, doing sets of 5 all the way through. And it's just a nice way to get volume, but I also don't get bored doing it, and I get a really good pump. I think that volume work with bench is actually really important to make progress. So, picking up from where we left off in the last video, I just wanted to read this. This is from Genesis chapter 3. This is after the creation accounts of Genesis 1 and then Genesis 2. There are some differences between those two accounts, but I'm not going to really get into that too much right now. What I want to focus on is what humanity does once they're in the garden. Now, we learned from Genesis 1 that God created humanity to image God, to be the image of God, visible representation. And that this takes two. And once there are two human beings, it is very good. Uh, but there's this serpent in the garden, and this tree from which God has said that they should not eat the fruit, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So this is the passage. But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, that is, if you eat the fruit. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." I want to note at that point that the serpent is undermining the very creative act of God, that God has already made them in the image of God. Yet the serpent is really questioning that and saying, no, you're not like God unless you make yourself more than you are right now. Unless you become more than what you were created, you can't be like God. And so there's an attack there upon their identity. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves loincloths, or coverings, as some translations say. What happens here is when both of these human beings eat of this fruit and gain this knowledge, as they are attempting to be like God, to create themselves and make themselves God, taking the form of the Creator, changing their identity, changing the properties of themselves, and taking things that are forbidden for them to take by God, they are in fact making themselves like God in the sense that they are creating themselves. Yet they are not making themselves like God, because God does not act that way. God is not the type of God that takes power and seizes it and grasps it. Paul says of Jesus, the revelation of God from the Christian perspective, that even though he was in the form of God, he did not think equality was something to be grasped. Yet the original humans, Adam and Eve here, they do grasp at that equality with God. And in doing so, they become ashamed of who they are. They weren't good enough. They needed to make themselves better, at least in their own eyes. And that is what the serpent's temptation is. But once they buy into that paradigm, once they buy into that way of life, they realize that they're not good enough and that they are embarrassed. They're ashamed. Before they were naked and they were not ashamed because they were fine with who they were. Yet now, because they've bought into this system of self-making and self-forming, now that they are their own creators, they're not satisfied with who they were created to be and who they are. They need to augment themselves. They need to change who they are. And this is the whole problem. This brings down the issue of jealousy, and violence flows right from that behavior. This is going to be an issue with their children. Cain, who murders his brother Abel because he is jealous of what his brother Abel does and how God honors and respects that. This cycle of feeling insecure, of feeling inadequate, is at the core of many, many human needs and processes. But it's something that the Bible looks at and says, we don't need to buy into that system. God loves us first, before we've done anything, good or bad. Love is not earned, and we do not become approved by God by what we do and what we can produce and what we take. Rather, we need to be who we were created to be, for God already loves us. And that is really what the original sin is. It's this sin of self-making, the sin of becoming God and making ourselves in our own image that we think is right, rather than accepting who God has made us to be. So anyways, again, I'll be talking more on that, but this gets at the core of what it means to love yourself. And we can love ourselves, and that is to accept and appreciate who we are when we know that God has made us just the way we're supposed to be, and that God loves us just as we are. In any case, hope wherever you're at, you're doing well out there. Blessings.